Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's presentation, Abnormal and Spectacular Animal Morphs of India, is brought to you by NatHab Expedition Leader Varun Devaraj. A little bit more about a presenter. Varun began his natural history career working with the Keystone Foundation in the Nilgiri Mountains, focusing on afforestation and conservation, before spending 5 years at Supura Tiger Reserve in India's Central Highlands, guiding safaris among leopards, sloth bears, wild dogs, and tigers. He worked as a consultant helping wildlife properties with their programs, content and marketing initiatives, and explored the trans-Himalayan region of Ladakh before joining Nahab as an expedition leader in 2023. As a naturalist guide, Varun covers diverse terrain from the tiger reserves of central India to the Western Ghats and Ladakh, with extensive experience exploring habitats from mangroves to the arid environments of Gujarat and Rajasthan. Thank you so much for being here today, Varun. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Brooke, for that generous introduction. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Daily Dose of Nature. The topic, as Brooke mentioned, is abnormal and spectacular animal morphs of India. Now, this is, I hope, throws some light on some of these spectacular morphs in the animal world in India, and a couple of examples from around the world as well. So, well, let's dive straight into it. Well, I think Brooke already, did give quite a detailed sort of history of my time in wildlife and how I came to be an ATAP guide. But then again, the one thing I would like to add is I'm from southern India, a state called Tamil Nadu, which is in the southern peninsula part of India, from a mountainous region called the Nilgiris, and that has been home, and that's possibly why this field interested me so much, because I was surrounded by forests growing up, and it was an inevitable decision, though I didn't realize at the time I was growing up that this was something that I definitely wanted to do. Well, okay, enough about me, and let's get into the different morphs and other things in this presentation. So, all right, now before we get into different morphs and unique, appearances in the animal world, we've got to clarify one thing. I think most people are aware of, the VIBGYOR, or the visible light spectrum that human beings can see, and I think people have a fair idea of the other species and how they see light. But just to throw this in, well, as you know, the VIBGYOR system, the violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red spectrum, which we see, the VIBGYOR system, is something that humans can see well in terms of our, the color band that we can see. Amongst birds, of course, they are capable of seeing ultraviolet, and so they are capable. So what we see, the plumages of the birds are just part of the picture. Some of the bird species can see more detail than us in terms of color, and this is a simplification of the whole process. Essentially, it is a combination of rods and cones and other complicated mechanisms within the eye. But in terms of color definition, this is what we can see as humans, and birds can see even more detail in terms of color in the UV spectrum. Now, uh, when it comes to cats and dogs, they have a similar vision to humans who sometimes have red-green color blindness. So they can see violet, indigo, blue, but from the green spectrum on towards the red is something that they don't see very well in. And this is similar for dogs and cats, and possibly there are a bunch of differences in terms of the rods and cones, but one particular difference is that cats have this layer called the tapetum lucidum, which essentially amplifies ambient light and helps them see in really dark conditions, making them, capable of seeing in, making them nocturnal. Dogs do move. Dog species like wolves and things, wild dogs and other species do move around at night, but not as as frequently as cats do. So this layer helps them see this in this particular light. And of course, we've covered what humans can see in terms of the color spectrum. And the next thing is snakes. Now, snakes are capable of seeing. They have very low resolution in terms of color during the day, but it helps them, identify things during the night. And some of the species have labial pits, which enable them to see, to sense or see infrared, and that enables them to hunt prey, avoid predators and things like that. And the last one are cephalopods and squids, octopus and the others which live in the deep oceans. They are almost completely colorblind, and they can see different shades of gray. Now, this essentially, and it also gives them a great perception of prey and movement and tracking movement and things. This is useful in the deep dark oceans, because really being able to differentiate different colors is not an advantage in the deep dark oceans, because hardly any sunlight sort of reaches these areas. So every animal sort of evolves, and their eyesight evolves with this, with the conditions that they inhabit. Why am I getting into this? Because one of the main reasons is that we as humans tend to see certain morphs in different colors from what possibly the animals, the other animals like cats and dogs, or other species see the same color. So this is just to differentiate what we are seeing essentially is not the same as what dogs and cats and birds see. That's all this is. So the next, okay, now for the sake of this presentation, I have to get into some genetic jargon, or like scientific jargon, and I'm going to keep it as simple as I can. But it is interesting, so I think a lot of you will be interested in. But these are, I think, a fair few of you are already familiar with these terms of melanin, which is a natural pigment, which is a type of molecule that gives color to tissue, to the eyes, to various parts of the body. And melanin can broadly be classified, and this is a simplification, sometimes an oversimplification, but can be classified into eumelanin and phosphomelanin. Eumelanin, for the sake of this presentation, deals with the dark brown to the black, and phosphomelanin with the dark yellow to the reddish brown. I will rehash this during the presentation so that you remember. And of course, when we talk about genetics and genes, what are genes? They're segments or parts of the DNA strand which carry instructions of to make proteins and other molecules. Now, that is an oversimplification, I understand that, but we are going to keep it fairly basic. So, and there is a compound or a enzyme called thyronase, which is a copper containing enzyme which helps in melanin biosynthesis in humans and other organisms. Now, this is something that will pop up in the presentation, so it's useful to remember this term. And of course, melanocytes, which is the melanin producing cells in the skin's epidermis. That's the second layer of the skin. So these are melanocytes. And I think that's enough with the jargon for now, and I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right, so here is again a very basic simplification of the nucleus and the cells, the cell structure and the nucleus and the chromosome within that on the top left-hand corner, and you have the DNA strand. And when you look at the DNA strand, or what we think the double helix strand, you talk about small parts or segments of this DNA strand called genes. Now, we won't get into nucleotides and the other things, but these particular genes are what carry these instructions, like I explained in the previous slide. Now, on the right top corner, you have alleles. Now, alleles are sets of portions, sets of genes, pairs of genes, and this determine basically your skin color, the blood type, the hair color, eye color. For instance, if suppose the two parents, like essentially is a pair, right? So if parents are both B positive in terms of the blood type, the likelihood of the child being B positive is high. So these are things which we this is the basics which we need to understand to sort of enable us to make sense of this presentation. And the next thing, what I'm going to touch upon, is something known as autosomal recessive inheritance. When I say autosomal recessive inheritance, that's a mouthful, I understand that. Well, autosomal is basically anything to do with chromosomes that are non-sex chromosomes. So we leave out the sex chromosomes and we talk about the other chromosomes, eye color, height, everything. All of those are autosomal chromosomes. And recessive is a way of passing down these sort of alleles, genes, and the inheritance basically is. So when you look at this particular, I think they're labs, I'm not entirely certain, but when you look at this, the figure on the bottom left and right, you notice that there's one on the left, it says the carrier father and the carrier mother. Now, when we talk about carriers, okay, let's, for instance, just for an example, let's just talk about blue eyes. Now, the father in this instance on the left is a carrier of blue eyes, and the mother is the carrier of blue eyes. So now what does this mean? So there is a 25% chance that the puppy is clear, doesn't have blue eyes or not a carrier. Now there is a 25% chance it's a carrier as well as has blue eyes. And then there is another small percentage chance where the the puppy, 1 in 4 or whatever, the puppy is a carrier, but doesn't exhibit the blue eyes. And that's basically just, I mean, an oversimplification, I understand. But and then on the right, where you look at the autosomal recessive inheritance, this is clear. I mean, a carrier to clear mating. For instance, the one on the left is a carrier to carrier mating, and the one on the right is a carrier to clear mating. Now, in this instance, there is, we're talking about the same blue eyes, and the mother doesn't have the blue eyes or doesn't carry the genes for the blue eyes, whereas the father is a carrier. Now, in this instance, well, there's a 50% chance that the puppy is not a carrier because the mother has clear eyes, brown eyes, and there's a 50% or a small 25% chance that the pups are carriers, but they don't exhibit blue eyes because the mother doesn't have the gene in it. So both the parents have to either, I mean, have to be carriers for the gene to be expressed, and or have to be, have to show the recessive gene in terms of expressing it for the cubs or the pups to be to express this or to exhibit these particular genes. I think that explains it in an oversimplified way, maybe, but yep. All right. Now we're going to talk about a number of isms, if I can put it that way. And before I start shifting from one slide to the other, I'm going to apologize in advance for some of the images, because a lot of the images, I mean, a few of the images in this presentation are from camera trap images, and a few are, you can tell, are excited photographers who couldn't hide their excitement. So there's basically some of them are blurred pictures, so excuse me for that one. So the first particular kind of morph or unique skin colorations we're going to talk about is albinism. I think people are familiar with albinism, but let me get into it in a little bit more detail. It is a hyperpigmentary disorder. So essentially, when we talk about melanism, albinism, it's not that the melanin content is less in the albinistic animals. It's the same level of melanin content. It's the, when you remember the tyronase that I spoke about, the enzyme in one of the previous slides. So basically, there's an absence of the this functional tyronase enzyme in albinistic animals, where so the tyronase enzyme, which is responsible for the biosynthesis of these melanin content, is absent in albinism. So that is the reason why you have it shows up as pink, eyes, pink nose, and pink feet with really white skin color. So it's very different from melanism. It's the exact opposite of melanism, and this is largely due to the fact that the tyronase enzyme is absent. It has nothing to do with the level of melanin content. That's just to clarify things. And of course, like I explained, it is inherited by the autosomal recessive gene, which is the case for most conditions, but not all. All right, so I'm going to slowly move on to the next slide. Now, here is an image where you see a spotted deer. Again, the image is not very clear, but you see a spotted deer mother with two fawns. One is an albinistic fawn, and the other one just right behind it is not very clear, but if you look closely, right behind it is the regular fawn. This is taken by Akashdeep Badwan, who's a forest officer in India. And so for clarification, a forest officer is similar to your wildlife services, the people who work for the wildlife services. So this is an image by him, and here this clearly shows that the mother was a carrier of this particular albinistic, gene. So that's how it's expressed in one of the fawn, but not both. So there is a good chance that the other fawn is a carrier as well. So I mean, there is a small chance that it's not, but there is a chance that it is as well. Now I'm going to slowly move on to the next slide. All right. So I think people have heard, or some of you have seen, white tigers in the zoos, in various zoos. I know, going to zoos is not something that, all of us enjoy. Some of us, do, but some of us don't. But if you've gone to any zoo, or if you've seen pictures from zoos, you've seen these white, blue-eyed white tigers. They're not albinistic tigers, or they're not leucistic tigers. I'll come to that in the next few slides. But they're blue-eyed white morphs. What do I mean by a blue-eyed white morph? Now, before I get into that, let me talk about this particular image. This is from a museum in Rewa, a district in Madhya Pradesh, which is in central India. So one of our NatHab tours, which is the Grand India tour, passes through, goes to a park called Bandhavgarh, among the three parks, Bandhavgarh, Kana, and Kaziranga. So this particular animal was basically found in the 1950s. So this is a specimen which was found in the 1950s by the Raja Maharaja of Rewa. And so every white tiger in any zoo in the world can trace its genes back to this particular individual, which is it's called the white tiger of Rewa. And and over time, it's people have bred these tigers to make them appear more white, and selective breeding. And but all the white tigers in all of the zoos in the world can trace their genes back to this particular individual called the white tiger of Rewa, which is in the 1950s in India. So I will move on to the next slide. And this particular image is from the Singapore Zoo. Now, again, this individual can trace its genes back to the white tiger of Rewa. Now, why does this happen? Now, this particular morph, the dominant genes affecting this creamy or white color essentially affects the part of the melanin enzyme, or the melanin enzyme, but it doesn't affect the nose, it doesn't affect the paws, it doesn't affect the lips. It only affects the melanin content and not the entire melanin spectrum. It only affects the pho-melanin spectrum, the pathway rather. So I explained the eumelanin and the pho-melanin pathway. In this particular instance, the eumelanin pathway is not affected. So you can see the dark stripes. They appear to be a darkish brown, which is normal for tigers. Usually you have them with the more orangish brownish coat. So that spectrum, which is the pho-melanin spectrum or the pho-melanin pathway in the melanin structure, has been affected by this particular gene. So but the eyes you see are bluish in color. So this is not albinistic or leucism, but it's the blue-eyed white morph, which I spoke about in the previous slide. So I'm going to again move on to the next one. Okay, so our next ism, as I put it, is leucism. Now, this is a particular image of something is a captive peacock. I think this one's not from India. I think from France, if I'm not mistaken. So what is leucism? Leucism is basically an inherited defect in the transfer process. So while the genes are being transferred from the mother to the offspring or the father to the offspring, there is a defect, and this results in leucism. And leucism, if you notice, in those leucistic animals, you notice that the eye color and the beak color, the bill color, and the feet are of normal color. So the melanin content in those particular parts of the animal, the eyes and things, are not affected. So it is to do with one particular defect in the pigment transfer process that results in leucism. Now, it's different from albinism, and it's different from sort of, I will come to the other morphs soon, but it's different from albinism. Let's leave it at that for now. And yeah, so this next image is from India, and if you notice, in the inset is how this particular animal is the giant squirrel, the Indian giant squirrel, or in the southern area it's called the Malabar giant squirrel, but it's the Indian giant squirrel. And the inside picture shows you how they normally look. It's a fabulous squirrel, large, almost like up to a meter, 3 feet over 3 feet, and that's how they normally look. It's a maroon, or almost an iridescent maroon color, with buff underparts and beautiful, brownish paws and the brown tinged or golden tinged tail. But the larger image is of a leucistic Indian giant squirrel. Now you can see that the eye color is normal. So this is a leucistic form. It's not albinistic, it's a leucistic form. This is one of the ways you can tell in the field. You may be familiar with this concept, but it's one of the way which you can tell in the field, where it's easy to tell apart from a leucistic animal and a albinistic animal. So this essentially is a defect in the transfer process of a particular affected gene, so to speak. Now, the next, okay, now I think people are familiar with melanism. You've heard of melanistic, the what we call, I mean, in common terminology, black panthers. Now you hear of black panthers in Africa now, in Kenya, I think. Now you and they essentially they're found in many parts of the world. I mean, in many parts of where leopards are found. It is just that sometimes the frequency with which they're seen are less, and and of course it is a particular gene of a melanin pigment that that's a gene that is passed on from one generation to the other. Essentially what this is the exact opposite of albinism. Albinism, you've got the tyranase enzyme, which is the copper carrying enzyme, which doesn't, I mean, there's a lack of the tyranase enzyme, whereas in the melanistic form there's an overabundance of the tyranase enzyme, where there's overabundance of the biosynthesis of melanin. That is the reason. It's not to do with the amount of melanin, but the biosynthesis of the melanin content, right? So the picture on the left is a photograph by a gentleman called Prakash Ramakrishnan. This is from southern India, and this is something that it's not relevant to the presentation, but I take great glee in saying this. But well, this is literally 400 meters from where my parents live, and I get a chance to go every once in a while and try and look for them. This particular image, although was taken 15 years ago, but we do see black leopards in the area from time to time. And the male in the instance on the left is a large male. I have seen that particular individual, that large male, but I haven't seen this particular black leopard, the one on the left. I have seen future generations, but not this particular one. Well, on the one on the right is interesting because you can see the rosettes. You can see the rosettes, and this particular image is from Anurag Gawande from Tadoba Tiger Reserve. So one of our NatHab trips, the tiger tour, is in from this season is going to Tadoba. So I'm not going to stick my neck out and say you're going to see this particular individual, but we can be certain that some of the genes are, I mean, some of the leopards in that particular park are carrying this gene, and you may never know. You never know if if luck is on our side. You never know, we can run into one of these black leopards or melanistic leopards. Now, essentially, now these are fascinating creatures, but one thing we've got to remember is the rosettes are still visible on most black leopards. Even the one on the left in the right light, you can see the rosettes. So it's not completely black, but you can see the rosettes in the right light. Sorry, excuse me for a second. All right. So this particular slide is what I was talking about when I said I've seen a few individuals from the future generations, from in reference to the one in the past. These 4 leopard cubs, sorry, that was a giveaway, but I hope everybody can see 4 leopard cubs. 3 are very visible. There's 2 the black leopard cubs, and then there are 2 regular cubs, one in front of the tufted grass and one behind the tufted grass. Now, this is a picture, camera trap image by a gentleman called Agal Sivlingam. He is a great friend who essentially took me out birding and mammal watching when I was a young kid. And this is his image, and this is again 400 meters from where my parents live. This is a clear, I mean, it's well, this image is fascinating in itself, but what this tells you is that the mother and the father would have had to be carriers for these 2 cubs to be born black. And the cubs that have the normal coat are possible carriers as well of this gene. Now, I know for a fact, because I've seen these individuals, that the mother is a regular leopard and the father is a black leopard, because I've seen them with my own eyes. And I've seen all 6, not in the same frame, but in the same hillock. And this is really fascinating. You can see how the genes have been passed on. There are 2 black leopards, which means that they are carrying the gene as well as expressing it. And there are 2 regular leopards who are most likely carrying the gene as well. So this gene is now going to be spread across the set of hills that I call home in the Nilgiris. And it's the most fascinating thing to see, how one generation passes on the melanistic gene to the next. I've been fortunate to see this, and friends of mine, don't miss a chance to come there and impose on my parents sometimes and try to get a look at these leopards. So this next image is much clearer. So all 4 of them are not visible in this one. So the 2 black are visible, and the one regular leopard is visible in this one. This is a friend of mine, Surya Ramachandran, who's also a fellow NatHab guide. Some of you may be familiar with him, but a fellow NatHab guide who is a great friend, and this is his image, and we were together when this was happening. So these two are regular, I mean, sorry, these two are black leopard cubs, and that's one of the regular leopard cubs is visible in this one. One is not, and the mother was out of frame as well. But I mean, this is some of the most fascinating wildlife scenes I've seen in my life. Honestly, I've been privileged to call this home, and so these are again melanistic leopard cubs. I'm going to reluctantly move on to the next slide. All right. So there's another morph, another ism, so to speak, which is pseudo-melanism. Now, when I talk about pseudo-melanism, this is not a melanistic gene, but a pseudo-melanistic, rather mutation, let's put it this way, where it's also known as abundism, where it causes this genetic variant causes enlarged or fused stripes or rosettes. So you have these beautiful tigers in the Simlipal forest, which is in Orissa, which is the eastern part of central India. Unfortunately, and our NatHab trips don't go through those forests, but you never know in the future what could happen. So, well, as of now, we don't pass through those forests, but we know that they exist there because we constantly get camera trap evidences, and people have taken photographs as well from these forests. Essentially, this is pseudo-melanism, which is a form of, it's also called abundism, like I said. It's a genetic variant causing enlarged large stripes or fused stripes. Now, why does this happen? Well, this happens because of a mutation in a short form, we can call it a TACPEP gene, but it's the transmembrane anti-aminopeptidase gene. That's a mouthful as well, but let's just call it the TACPEP gene. Now, this image was shared by the Simlipal Forest Department. It's a camera trap image, and the individuals in this particular forest, a lot of them carry this gene. It is a beautiful forest, a really thick forest, and tigers there carry this particular gene, this pseudo-melanistic gene. Now, this image is from the same forest department. You can see the camera trap on the right extreme. So these are two individuals which carry this pseudo-melanistic gene, and you can see the fusing of the stripes, the clear fusing of the stripes. And they are beautiful, beautiful tigers to look at. And yeah, so very few people have actually seen them. Even people who visited these parks repeatedly have not seen them, but they've always popped up in camera trap images, and a few photographers who really put in a lot of hard work, and a few really lucky people who've just gone in for one drive and really, not really cared about anything, have seen them. So that's how the luck of the draw is. And the next slide. Now, this, I think I'm just going to take a guess and say a few people may have already seen this. This is the September issue of the National Geographic magazine, and this is the global issue. And for the first time, an Indian photographer made it to the cover of the global magazine. His name is Prasanjit Yadav. He's also called Prasan Yadav. He is a Nat Geo photographer, Nat Geo fellow, I mean, hats off to him. He spent a lot of time looking out for these tigers in this park, spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and finally, the result is this image that you see in front of us. A beautiful head-on face, face and looking at you image of the pseudo-melanistic tiger, and you can see that large dark band on its spine, whereas the side images are what I showed you in the previous slides. But hats off to him. This is something that has taken a lot of hard work and a fantastic image as a result of it. This is on the global cover of the September issue of the, if you're interested, you can get a hold of it. And there is some text explaining some of the details of it as well. So, all right. So this is again pseudo-melanism, but this instance is from southern India, close to home, in a place called Parambiculam, which is shared by the Parambiculam Forest Department. Now, they were kind enough to share it with a friend who was kind enough to share it with me. So this is again pseudo-melanism, which is the fusing of not the stripes, but in this instance the rosettes. So this is interesting, and you can see the almost like fused rosettes, and then the dark spine. That's quite a fascinating animal. I don't think many people have seen it in real life, but this is a camera trap image, and again, fascinating ways of how genes are expressed and genes are passed down. So, all right. Now, this particular image, sorry, This particular image is from South Africa. It's not from India. It's by Dion de Villiers, who's the photographer, and also known as strawberry leopards or the red leopards, strawberry leopards. They're known with various names. It is another ism called erythrism. Now, what is erythrism? Again, like I'd mentioned before, the melanin, the wavelength where you've got the eumelanin and the phosphomelananin. In this particular instance, the erythrism is the overabundance of the phosphomelananin, which is the red pigment of the melanin band. So there's a reduction in the in the dark pigment and the overabundance of the red pigment. And that is a result of this erythrism, which is you find red leopards, you talk of strawberry leopards, red leopards, these are, again, a case of erythrism. So the next time you know that these are erythristic leopards. So this is from South Africa. There's a clear image from South Africa. And this particular one, like the first slide, it's called the golden tiger. Some people refer to it as the strawberry tiger. Essentially, it's an erythristic tiger. Now, this particular image is by Gaurav Ramnaran, a fabulous image of a tiger from Kaziranga National Park. Now, Kaziranga National Park is on our circuit. NatHab runs a tour called the Great Indian Wildlife Tour, which is what Kaziranga falls in this circuit, the last park in this circuit. And this particular tiger is being seen in on and off in this particular park. A beautiful, beautiful erythristic tiger. There is a small chance, NatHab guests may see them on this particular tour, but there's also a chance that the tigers that you see in Kaziranga are carrying this particular gene, the erythristic gene of this particular tiger. So that in itself is quite fascinating to know that, where they're going to be expressed, interesting to see how they're going to be expressed in future generations and if they're going to be expressed in future generations. So that's something to look out for in one of the NatHab trips. And this is an erythristic or a golden tiger, as they call them in India. So, all right, now there is another form of hypomelanism. Now, for instance, this particular mammal, firstly, let me clarify what this mammal is a gaur, which you're likely to see on your NatHab trips to India if you do happen to come to India. You have the Grand India Tour, which takes you to the parks where you can see these animals, or even the India Tiger Tour, which you see this animal. So the one in the inset is how it normally looks. It's the largest bovine in the world, called the Indian gaur. Uh, and it's this one, the inset is a particular male with the dark coat, with the expansive, rather very prominent dorsal ridge. And you can see the dark sheen on it with the white socks. Whereas the larger image is of a hypomelanistic gaur, which is, you can see the almost yellow sort of fawn creamish in color. And so it's individuals with insufficient pigmented skin. Now, and you can see that the socks are still the same. The nose color and the eyes are still the same. The horn color is pretty much the same. It is just the skin and the hair follicles that basically are a hypomelanistic or yellowish fawnish color. Now, this is due to a mutation, again affecting the biosynthesis of melanin. It again comes back to the same bands of eumelanin, phosphomelananin. And this particular individual gaur carries the genetic mutation of the where there is a which affects the melanin biosynthesis of this particular mammal. So now, if I go to the next image, now there is an entirely different morph called the piebaldism. Now, when you talk about piebaldism, the gaur at the background is how they normally appear, the dark coat, and the one in the front again is from the Nilgiris, which is where home is, the high hills. And this particular individual is a piebaldic gaur. Now, basically, it's a hypopigmentation, and it's the absence of the pigment, or the absence of melanocytes, which are the cells that produce melanin, in in certain locations of the skin. It's not overall. It's not a case of in leucistic animals where it's overall the same color, but in patches. So you can see there's a lack of melanocyte development in local areas of the skin of this particular gaur. Now, this one, a piebald mammal, is found in other mammal forms as well, but definitely visible in this particular gaur. So this sort of comes to the last morph that I was going to talk about. It was a quick run through. I could have spent more time on every single morph, but that would have eaten up a lot of time. So the next slide. Okay, so this is going to be essentially my final slide. And we're going to, I mean, we're going to talk about unique morphs and the conservation conundrum. Now, when I talk about unique morphs and the conservation conundrum, the image on the left is from Simlipal Tiger Reserve, the tiger, the camera trap images that I showed of the pseudo-melanistic tiger with the abundistic, or, the morphing of, I mean, the merging of the stripes. And the one on the right, I think most people are familiar with in America, is the spirit bears or the Kermode bears from the British Columbia region of Canada. Now, when you talk about these two, species, there are two different approaches. Now, when you talk about, conservation, there are two different approaches. The Indian approach, and there are no right or wrong approaches; they're just different approaches. The Indian approach is that what the park authorities in Simlipal, where these tigers are, have decided to do is they've decided to introduce other tigers from other parks which don't carry this gene, and so that the genetic health of that particular population of tigers improves. What this does is it's going to stamp out this particular mutation over time, or that is the hope rather. And why they do this is so that this particular, in individual tiger populations, there's a lot of inbreeding if they are not connected to other parks, which is a case in a lot of parks in India, because there's island parks. In the sense, when I say island parks, there are parks which are surrounded by farmland and human habitation, so they essentially become parks which are island parks, and the population within them is sometimes highly inbred, or there's a lot of inbreeding. And what this results in is the passing on of these mutated genes, and you tend to see more of this expression in these individuals. So in India, what they've decided is, for the overall health of the tiger population, they've decided to introduce tigers from parks which don't have this. So to introduce tigers with different genes, so that the overall tiger population in Simlipal is healthier. There is a lot of people who are in India who are against it, saying that this is going to stamp out the pseudo-melanistic tiger completely. But if you look at the larger picture, I think there is some sense in introducing tigers. I mean, this is a personal opinion, and it's not. I'm not speaking for other people. So that the tiger population is healthier in the long term. Of course, it's going to affect the pseudo-melanistic tigers in terms of the expression. And on the right, when you talk about the Kermode bears or the spirit bears, which are from the British Columbian forest, what the park services there have done is they've decided, at least for the time being, they've decided not to interfere with the process. They are protecting these animals. They are ensuring that hunting licenses are not given for these particular animals specifically, and also ensuring that logging practices are around these British Columbia forests are restricted, so that these animals can thrive. But they're not introducing black bears, the American black bear, which is essentially what this animal is. They're not introducing American black bears to these forests. They are, I mean, if the black bears go into, I mean, the bears, the American black bear without this particular gene, which is the MC1R gene, which is essentially, they're not leucistic, or they're not, what is this, albinistic bears, but they are essentially, they carry a particular mutated gene called the MC1R gene, which is a mutation in the melanin sort of pigment. So that's why they appear to be whitish in color. So they have the park services have decided not to introduce other bears like with the regular black coat, but rather if they enter through their own, if nature takes its course and they enter, and then they happen to breed with this particular bear species, I mean this morph, then so be it. But you've got to understand that within the Kermode or the spirit bear population, there is a preference to mate within the white bears tend to, the spirit bears tend to mate with other spirit bears. The reason for this are multifold, but just a couple of them would be is that in white flowing waters, it's an advantage to be, there is a advantage to be a lighter colored, so that the salmon cannot see you when you're wading through these rivers looking to hunt them. Now, that's similar to black leopards in India, where in dark rainforest, it is an advantage to be dark because the animals may not, the other, herbivores may not be able to pick you out. Now, then again, that is something that we don't fully understand in terms of how much they can see in terms of color and things like that. But with the spirit bears, it's known to there is a preference among spirit bears to breed with other spirit bears, and that is as an advantage in terms of hunting. So now there are two methods, and there is no right or wrong method when it comes to conservation and involving these special morphs. But in the end of the day, there are different approaches, and I am not an authority to claim which one is right or wrong, but they're just different approaches. And I thought I'd just let you know how different organizations or countries approach conservation when it comes to these particular different morphs of animals and yeah, so that sort of brings me to the end of my presentation. Now I'm going to hand it back to Brooke and to see if there are any questions from the audience. Brooke, over to you.
Awesome, Varun. Thank you so much for that science-filled, very interesting webinar on different animal morphs. Yeah, just like as Varun said, we do have some time for some Q&A here. So if you have any additional questions that you would like me to ask Varun, go ahead and put those in your control panel, and we will see how many we can get through before the end of the hour. Yeah, so there is a reoccurring theme that keeps popping up. Can you explain why there might be genetic issues with these morphs?
Well, the reason why I say there are genetic issues, it's uh, when these morphs express themselves and are carried from one generation to the next, essentially because of isolation, geographic isolation. So these are inbred populations and they're geographically isolated, either because of forests being cut around them or in the case of certain islands and things like that. So that is the reason why they're highly inbred. So the issue essentially is not of the color being expressed or the morph being expressed, is that they're prone to diseases, they're prone to all sorts of, the essentially they're much more prone to diseases, and that's one reason. And there are multiple other reasons why they're at risk. So essentially, it is not a healthy situation to have highly inbred any form of animals that are highly inbred. So
Great, thank you for that further explanation. Could you talk a little bit more about those really cute 4 leopard cubs that we saw? Were they all from the
well,
same litter?
they're
And talk a little bit more about their history.
Well, I'd love to go on all night, and I'm happy to talk about them. Well, they're from home, like I said, so happy to talk about them. So they are from the same litter, to answer your question. Those 4 leopard cubs are from the same litter. But the previous litter, there was, so this was one mother. The previous litter, there were 2 black cubs, and there were only 2 cubs, and both expressed the gene, and both were black in color. They were carrying the gene, and they expressed the gene. They dispersed, and but this is the second litter that we saw of black cubs in this duration of over 4 years. And they were all from one litter. They're, 2 of them, like you saw in the photographs, are uh, carriers as well as they express the gene. And the other 2 are possibly carriers, and I think highly likely are carriers, and they don't express the gene. So that's, and we've seen that one of the cubs from the previous litter has been mating in a different valley around the same area. So there is a chance that with a regular leopard, so that is a black male from the previous litter, and with a regular female, so there is a chance that that particular female may be a carrier, that particular regular leopard may be a carrier. So, we could see more black cubs pop up in different valleys around home. So, hopefully we never know. So, yep.
I'm sure you'll be on the lookout for them and will let us know
We're
if there's
all
more, right?
we're always on the lookout. We're always on the lookout. We're always constantly. In fact, I keep chatting with the photographer who got that image. He's a very good friend and almost like a guru to me. So he keeps updating me on what's popping up where and things like that. So yeah, itching to go back to the hills to explore some more. So yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I actually just spent several weeks in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, and in a similar way,
Mhm.
the Yellowstone's famous black wolves that is genetic to that area. So I
Yep.
actually
Yep.
saw 6 black pups,
Wow.
which was
Yep.
so cool. Almost that entire litter, I mean, almost that entire pack is now black, which is crazy. It just very to that region, kind of like what you're saying. To that region, there's a lot of black
Yep.
leopards,
I
and
mean,
there's a lot of
I think, Brooke, we were talking earlier, and I was fortunate enough to see one of those black wolves. We just saw
mm,
one, but I was fortunate enough to see one of those black wolves last year when we'd come up to Yellowstone. So, yep, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So for those in the US, we have some of our own morphs in our own backyard.
Yeah,
If you have a chance to
absolutely,
get out to
absolutely.
Yellowstone and see them.
Yep. And they run a trip there, and even with regards to, I didn't mention this, but even with regards to the Kermode bears, the split bears, NatHab runs a tour up there to British Columbia, so that's another option to see a different morph in North America. So yeah, that's fascinating as well. So
Yeah, yeah, these are so cool. I'm really glad you brought this topic up because it is one that isn't talked a lot about, but it's just as fascinating from a genetic
yep,
standpoint, from wildlife observation standpoint. No, this is great.
yep, yep.
Awesome. We have more questions rolling in, and this is a good one. Are the animals with morphs more in danger of poaching or being captured?
Well, that is, I would say, yes, that is true. I mean, in the past, that was the case because it was always, a treasured trophy. Because when you talk about trophy hunting, people have. I mean, in India, there's been a huge, history of trophy hunting, like there is world over. And so, when somebody had a trophy of a melanistic leopard, that was a big deal. Somebody had a leopard trophy of a, like a leucistic bear. There have been leucistic sloth bears. I didn't get a good image, so I couldn't show it. The leucistic sloth bears that are found in India, which are like trophies of them. So essentially they are more prone to hunting, yes. They were more prone to hunting, yes. And today's world, they could still be more prone to hunting. We don't have information regarding that in terms of statistics, but definitely yes, in the past, for sure. Yep.
Ooh, I bet that'd be a very interesting illegal
Yep.
wildlife trade
And
question,
yeah, that
the
is an illegal
underground
wildlife
illegal
question.
wildlife trade.
Yep.
Uh, Great. Yeah. There's another thing that has come up. If you could talk a little bit more about the behavior between normal morphs and then
Hmm.
these abnormal morphs.
Yep.
Is there any differences between the two? Do some
So
species act differently?
So from what we can discern, like again, this is again through human eyes, or anthropomorphic view of the whole situation, is that basically I don't think it makes too much of a difference to them, because I mean I don't speak from a position of authority, but we've seen regular leopards mate with black leopards, and I've seen this happen, and not just there. And I was part of a filming crew that filmed the black leopard in one of the southern Indian parks during the unfortunate COVID break. So there was a regular, there was a black black melanistic leopard that used to mate with the regular leopards, that used to interact with regular leopards, that like you'd see how leopards interact with others. The one thing I would say is it affected behavior in terms of being visible to prey species, but intra-species, I don't know if there is a big difference in terms of being treated differently, or being in terms of interacting differently. Not that I've noticed, and I haven't come across any papers that suggest that there's enough research being done that suggests that they do behave differently. So from my perspective, from the research that I've read and from what I understand, which is limited, I understand that I don't think there is any different behavior towards morphs. So
Great. Thank you so much for that explanation.
yeah.
And also, yeah, it's then the further question is then also what are they seeing? These cats get to
Hmm.
see, warm collars and stuff. So what do they see versus what we see?
Well, like I explained in that one, I think I just touched upon it, like briefly touched upon it. I think they're more, they see in the VIB sort of spectrum, which is the violet, indigo, blue. So they're essentially blind from orange onwards to, to red, green onwards to red. So that spectrum of the spectrum is not visible to cats. Is from what we understand from the current research that we understand, there it is not visible to cats. So that's the understanding at the moment. Things could change in the future, but that's the current understanding.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. How often does this occur with either melanism or pseudo-melanism in leopards and tigers?
Well, I went through papers which studied morphs from 1880s to 2017. And so I didn't go through all the years. I went through papers which covered the research from all these years. Uh, and there have been over 100 instances of abnormal morphs being recorded, over easily over 100 instances of abnormal morphs being recorded in India alone. Now, some of them are hearsay and records, written records from hunters, from conservationists, from wildlife enthusiasts in the past, and then, of course, over the recent past, photographic evidence and from zoos and from all other areas, not just in the wild but in captivity as well. So, in India, the India specific answer to that would be over easily over 100 instances of different morphs, but to put a number on it would be extremely difficult because a lot of them would go unreported. A lot of them. Look, melanistic leopards are more common than we think we give. I mean, we know or we see. They're more commonly found in various parts of Northeast India, in parts of the Western Ghats, in Central India. So they're found in various places. It's just that you don't come across them as frequently as you do with regular leopards or regular moths, so to speak. So to put a number on them would be extremely difficult. But from one detailed research paper that covers over 100 years, over 150 years, in fact, it's recorded, instances of over 100 instances of morphs, different morphs in different animals. So, yep.
Great. And another really good follow-up question just came in. Is
Mm-hmm.
did that paper say, or any of your other research give an estimate for survival rates or longevity of these melanistic
Well, that's
versions?
in fact a couple of the papers suggested that more research needs to be done on that particular topic, because see, the thing is, seeing a melanistic cat itself is a challenge. Now, to be able to study a particular melanistic cat and find out mortality rates, that is a really interesting topic and one that needs more research to go in. But it's all you got to also understand that these are one-off instances that pop up in different places at different times. So to study mortality in these individuals on these populations is extremely difficult for one, and there is no research that, at least that I came across in doing my reading, that suggests that there's any research that's been done on abnormal morphs and mortality. And in fact, there is a paper that suggests that there needs to be more research, but there is no paper that I came across that suggests the percentage of mortality. So, yep,
Yeah,
I know
it
that.
makes me wonder too, how many, like what's the rate in jaguars? Jaguars are so hard to see
Yep.
outside of the air.
I mean,
Joffrey.
yeah, and Port Joffrey, I mean, it's I've not seen many images from there of melanistic jaguars, but you can't rule it out because essentially, uh, there are areas of southern, Central America and Southern America which people may not have been to and seen jaguars in. So we don't know till. I mean, you can never rule out something like this. There have been instances in India where there's been friends of mine who've photographed jungle cat, which is one of our smaller cats amongst the 15 wild species of cats we have in India. Melanistic jungle cats have been photographed. Melanistic desert cats have been seen, which is again in the northwestern part of India. So there are more than, in fact, the recorded numbers are fewer than the species that, I mean, the numbers that exist. So that's, I mean, that is natural. That's just in the case of probability. But yeah, it's interesting. One for the one a research paper for the future to find out mortality rates and things like that. So, yep.
That sounds like a really fun PhD. If there's
Hmm.
anybody who's listening and needs a
Well, yeah.
PhD
I mean,
topic,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That is
I
an
want that
interesting one.
topic. Um, okay, this is a really good one too. For all
Hmm.
of the different isms that you
Yep,
gave, are there
yep.
any skin issues or any sort of diseases that are common with those different isms?
Well, we've seen skin issues appear in regular morphs, uh, and not particularly seen skin issues appear in these particular morphs. They're regular leopards. It's just the melanin, I mean, the biosynthesis of melanin, or or differences in the phosphomelananin content or the eumelanin content. So essentially, it's not. From the images we've seen, or from what I've seen over 6 or 7 melanistic cats, melanistic leopards alone, and none of them seem to have any visible, because we use scopes to see them, so we can see them in fairly good detail. We're not getting really close to them in any way, but we see them in fair good detail because we're watching them through good spotting scopes, and there is no visible skin abnormality in that sense. It's just the melanin content that is affected. So to answer that question, no, we've not seen particular skin diseases or other abnormalities in these moths. So,
Great, that's reassuring.
right.
Can any of the other big cat species be melanistic, like can lions or mountain lions, or is this more reserved to the spotted and striped varieties?
Well, with lions, I think it's more a case of leucistic lions. I think there have been white lions of Savo and white lions of the other parts in Africa, especially. So I think with lions, I mean, this is again something that I will have to read up a little bit more on, but I would assume leucistic and albinistic would be more common in lions, from what I can understand, because the color itself is in the 4-melanin spectrum, right? So you don't have the dark, the eumelanin content itself is not there in the band. So I think it would be more leucistic and albinistic in that case of lions. Whereas the other cats, let me think about it. The other cats, maybe in mountain lions or the pumas and mountain lions. I don't know. I haven't read anything specific, but I will have to check up on that. So yeah.
What about snow leopards, since they have rosettes? Is there any
Well,
opportunity? Like, have you seen that?
well, I've seen a few snow leopards because I've spent a lot of time up in Ladakh with NatHab doing the snow leopard tour in Ladakh. But to be honest, I'm just happy to see a snow leopard. Well, any color would do. Right? And most of our trips and every one of our NatHab trips, we've seen snow leopards. But no, I've not been fortunate enough to see any ones with uh, although I did see one particular old individual. I don't know if it is the case because of how old that particular snow leopard was. I don't know if it was a genetic thing or just age, but a little lighter colored, old, really old male, snow leopard. So, I mean, I can't say with certainty that there are any abnormal morphs or abnormalities in morphs in snow leopards. I can't say with certainty. So, yeah.
Well, great. Well, I will go ahead and wrap up the Q&A section now. Those are some really great questions that came in from the audience. Thank you everyone so much for engaging with us. That was wonderful. So Varun, I will turn it to you for any last closing comments.
Well, thank you, Brooke, again for hosting this, and thank you everybody for attending this daily dose of nature. I hope you learned a little bit and hope you enjoyed the talk. And yeah, hopefully see some of you in India, not just to see the melanistic morphs and things like that, but also to see a lot of our wildlife. And it would be nice to have some of you here in India to explore, the varied species that we have in this country. And thank you once again for attending this daily dose of nature.
Yes, and Varun, thank you for giving us such an interesting and unique presentation. I know I learned a lot, and I think that everybody did too. So thank
Well,
you.
I'm glad you said that, Brooke. And in fact, it was an idea from Surya, in fact, who popped this idea into my
Of
head. So
course.
thank you to him as well. So well, yep, and yep, thank you again, once again. Thank you.
Yes, and I would like to thank everybody who tuned in. If you're interested in more information on how you can travel with NetHab, give us a call at 800-543-8917 or send us an email at info@nethab.com. Our adventure specialist will be more than happy to help you. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links on our website at nethab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and the replay will be available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.